Hey guys, I want to post a question to you. That question is, are humans actually alive? Now, this ties in to work that I've done as well on the Simerian tablets and the mysticism of that. Now, I did videos on the Simerian tablets and I explained that Enki was the very first Adam and Eve. And I explained that Gilgamesh, in the Epic of Gilgamesh, you clearly have the depiction of the story of Noah, etc. So I've shown all of that, but there are tablets that are a creation story in Simerian as well. And a lot of people know about this theory that goes around that there was alien species actually who created humanity, and they came here and genetically created us in accordance with the interpretation by Zechariah Sitchin of the Simerian creation tablets. Now there's a lot of conspiracy and grey areas surrounding that, noisy ibis, because when the Iraq war started, for example, a lot of the temples, the ancient Mesopotamian temples, have been destroyed in the war or through ISIS, and it's hard now to get a full grasp on what exactly is available from the Simerian tablets. But I've tried to explain that having a mind of a mystic, which I do have, I see things very easily sometimes, and one of the things I was literally just discussing today with Fritzy is, are we actually alive? Now, in the creation story with Enki and Enlil, the brothers, just so you're aware, I'm not going to go over that fully. I will in another video, but there's so many videos out there, I'd be covering old ground on the idea of the Anunnaki and all of that stuff. Now, I just want to say that's very interesting on the mystical side of it, is even if you don't think, well, first of all, let me say, there is definitely a physical possibility in this reality that we were created by an alien species. It's a total physical possibility. If you listen to the idea that humanoid species was spliced with the DNA of a different species that arrived here, only someone without a decent level of intelligence would say that's totally impossible, because of course it's a potential option. Now at the same time, you'll have people who fully reject that, but we also don't have the links of evolution. So there's so many grey areas, and of course it's very, to many, woo and out there, but the consensus is not set. We don't know the full origins of everything because we're missing so many bits of the puzzle. So it's certainly a very interesting idea. But on the mystic side of it, that aside, you look at the creation of a person. Now you need to let go of your view of the physical world when you do that. And you need to look at the idea that, is this story that is focusing on the physical aspects of a human being, is it actually meaning that, or is it referencing the internal world, which is almost impossible to label, and thus we need metaphor, allegory, labels on there to express and symbolize the internal workings of ourselves. You know, the awakening of people happens in a state of consciousness. It's hard to put a finger on the internal goings on, but if you give a physical depiction, then you get an idea. For instance, when you talk about wrestling your lower nature, to get across the point that it's a massive fight to overcome your lower nature, in ancient times they used a lion to symbolize that lower nature, and Samson wrestled this lion, and you all know that example is very common. Or you have the symbology of trying to escape the thoughts of your own mind and the prison of your own mind. In Greek mythology, they use the Minotaur and the maze, the bull-headed man in the maze. So you're running around in the maze and your ego is always chasing you down. It represents the journey inside your head as well. So you see these symbols are very necessary to convey things that we don't have necessarily language for. And especially in English, it's very true, because at least when you speak Greek or when you look at Hindi, etc., there are words for different states of consciousness. In Greek, there's a word for the feeling you get when you first meet someone, when you meet a person or an animal, and you get that wow feeling. A puppy runs at you and you both bond with this huge burst of energy. There's no word for that, so we don't even talk about it in English, but there is a word in Greek for it. There's a word for that first meeting, that first exchange of energy. It is an event, it's a thing, we just don't have a label in English. So it's super important that we understand that the restriction of language has meant in the past that symbols have to be added. Now, in the creation tablets, there's a part where it's discussing creating people, humans, to try and create us, but they keep coming out flawed, and there's always these problems with them. But within there's one line which is very significant, and it says, "You have created a being which is neither alive nor dead." And if you look at what this is getting at in the symbolic sense, it's fascinating to go with that sentence in your head and look at humans in a city. So the reason that's so fascinating is you come to this realization, especially if you've got an awareness or an education on the idea that you must be born again, or you must be enlightened, and you must wake up and get control of the never-ending chatter of the brain. And we have huge practices, religions and philosophies on this planet of a massive magnitude that are all based on us not thinking, or us learning not to think. And when you look at the animal world and you see these animals around you, they seem to be connected to a more vibrant part of life. And thus, you have to ask yourself, they are presumably are not thinking like we do. They haven't got this dialect going on in their head. They don't have that sort of brain. That dialect, that brain, leaves you in a space where you're neither alive nor dead. And if you watch people walking down the street, you can see them thinking to themselves. Now, if you watch an animal, you see that they're always present. They're always doing what they need to be doing in the present moment. They're either moving around, going to get their food. Very rarely do you ever, unless it's a domestic animal, see an animal fretting, unless there's a reason. You'll find humans switch off the feeling of being alive simply by going for a walk and thinking of their negative problems, going over stuff, and they shut off their life force almost. Their presentness is where the life force is expressed. And thus, it's fascinating to think that perhaps we were a species created with the flaw of the mind, and it wasn't a natural development. And the flaw of the mind shows you why here down on this planet, perhaps that's why it's so much focus on us learning not to think. And in learning not to think and finding that still quietness, we seem to find more love and empathy. And from love and empathy comes sharing, and I still believe sharing is the solution to the planet's problems. Sharing resources, time, love, energy, compassion, empathy, all of these things can end all of the problems of the planet. And I think stillness is the birthplace of that solution for inside each individual. If you have a dog at home, you'll see that a dog is always happy, it's always present. And I think if you took that dog and gave it the human faculty that makes it worry about what happened yesterday or what happened tomorrow, or they worry and they feel anxious that they took a wee on the carpet and they've upset someone, and they stay with it, they will lose that connection to their life force. They will die, but not totally die. They'll die to the present moment. I feel from all my research that in that Simerian creation story, it was telling you about that to some degree, that there is this aspect of humanity that's neither alive nor dead. Because if we come into the world and you go for a run, as an example, your mind gets empty and you're just present. That's why people get so into running. They're so vibrant and fresh about the present moment because they're running, there's no thought, and it's just coming to them, and it's kind of overwhelmingly beautiful in its own right. It's amazing. It's why people take drugs. They take them and then the thoughts go away and the present moment is just so beautiful. And it stimulates you. The simple looking at the world around you, at the beautiful flowers, like look at this beautiful flower that very rarely flowers here in Tanzania, that's why I put it there. Stunning, but to look at it you can go red flower, but it's stunning, it's a beautiful, beautiful expression of life. But many people don't feel that overwhelming wow factor because they're dead to the world because they're always thinking. And perhaps those animals are living in a natural state of life, which is a natural high that we miss. Perhaps they all have it, and that's what we're trying to attain. Perhaps Earth was never supposed to be so painful for so many. Perhaps Earth was always supposed to be a place of vibrance and life and joy and feeling wonderful. But because we humans are on this planet and we have this nor alive nor dead aspect of ourselves, we have this innate problem that when we look at a red flower, many of us can't just absorb it. Many of us have to say that's a flower, or we put horrible words in like it's just this, it's just that. Maybe we were never supposed to feel all of that sadness, yeah? Maybe we were always supposed to feel a constant, vibrant stimulus, which would mean we don't need drugs, etc. And maybe that's what the animal kingdom feels and sees, and I feel they do from spending so much time in nature. This is the last spot on Earth with the highest concentration of wild mammals in the world. I'm blessed to be in this country. And I can see it in nature, that they are vibrant and fresh and alive and they're moving around at a moment's notice. And I look at them and I see peace unless there's a problem. And we humans, you can see even the people who are out there looking at them. Every now and then you'll clock a person and you can tell they are in their thoughts and they're not here. And if you watch people going through the city, you can suss out which persons at which stage in the day, if you apply this, are alive and dead. Which are alive and aware of the present moment, and which are dead because they're not aware of that. Their heart's still beating, they're still breathing, but they're not aware of it, they're disconnected from it. And for me, I think that's a very important lesson and one I've always tried to convey, because in that present moment is the only place I've ever had communication from God, is in that present moment and when this is quiet. And I think it's fascinating that in the very earliest stone carvings that depict the very earliest human creation story ever recorded, that there's mentions to this. However, that is a physical story that says an alien race came here and did this and made us. But they made us neither alive nor dead. Because presumably if you were such a species, just theoretically, you were such a species and you wanted to create a slave, the ideal thing is to create something that feels the stimulus of life from time to time, but in the most part is programmable, which means you can feed orders into their brain and program them to work outside of that place. Because when you get to that present moment from meditation and fasting, it's so vibrant and perfect, you don't need no drugs, you don't need anything. But also I'd imagine it would make species very non-productive, because you've got the choice of feeling eternal stillness and bliss and contentment, or labouring, building, digging, or whatever it might be. Then it would make absolute sense even that is how you would engineer, however sadistic that is, but that is how you would create a species to serve that purpose, logically speaking. And I just think it's fascinating, that theory that humanity was a created species, because whether we were a created species by another species or not, it still stands the same, that we are indeed a species that is neither alive nor dead. But the beauty is, for all your heart is beating and you are neither alive nor dead, the option to leave death and join the vibrance of life is present in all our lives. And it's present in us taking the stance to stop, to get control of the organ that is our brain, to not identify with the sounds it's making as our identity, and to wake up to true life, this present here, vibrant, wonderful life. We must wake up to it every single day and just bask in the constant moving stillness of it all. That's how I can best describe it. And I just wanted to share that. Are humans alive or dead? Well, I think there are different ways to be alive. Just as Jesus thought, there is a time to be born again. And I think we can be born again. But I think we must ensure that we always stay alive once we are. And we must never fall back into fear and anxiety and worry and thoughts and anticipation or worry about the future or regrets of the past. At some point you've got to come and be alive in the moment and take control of your life from that moment, because that's how you control your future and your past, is from now. But many people sadly are dead and they don't even know now exists. So if you can guide people to that now and help to wake them up to be alive, because they'll never look back once they touch it, then I think we should. Because I think that is, again, part of the problem of humanity. Very unconscious people in positions of power. So, God bless, guys. Thought I'd just share that anyway.